I'll share my screen too. So for context sake, I'm also a product designer here at GitLab. This is Mech, Director of Quality. Mech came up with this awesome idea for test sessions, and this little working group we're going to have together today is just to talk about that, the MVC idea they kind of generated, and for me to ask some clarifying questions because I'm not well informed.
Thank you for reaching out, Austin. And yes, this to highlight, this meeting is about test sessions, and it's a key component in many, if not all, test case management system, in short for TCMS, so test rail, quality center, and all that. And I do want to highlight, oh, you have it shown already. So the reason why we need test sessions is because we need to link test cases. I want to highlight test cases, not tests, because if you're talking about just tests, there's a spectrum of it. There are things that move really fast that you don't really need a test case for. And those are unit tests. Those are feature specs where we have more than 150,000 tests running at a given time. It's not feasible to have a more comprehensive paperwork that can be linked to requirements. So think about the test pyramid. There are no test cases for the lower of the pyramid because the rate of change is so fast. But when you move up the pyramid at the top, where it's functional validation, end-to-end validation that our customers want to know, did you test this scenario? Did you test this use case? It's very useful for both transparency reason and compliance reason to have test cases. And that's what we do here at GitLab. As you can see that there's a mock-up here. This is just an idea we had, I think, a month ago, which is now we are starting to automate. This issue is, yes, so you can see it collects information. If you go back real quick. What we do here is we list the test case and whether it passed or failed. And it's this high value test in CI pipelines at the end of the release process that we want to know. It's not run on every MR, it's run at very specific areas of the pipeline that is closer to the customers. So master branch, staging, pre-prod, and sometimes even production. The use case here is that we're linking both the test case and where the pipeline is being run. You can see the first one on the create, it's running in staging. So this is like a staging test session, to staging report. And the test case is now it's auto-generated by issues. We're going to migrate it to the test case feature this quarter. And we aim to have one test session for deployment workflow, and that can be linked traceable to a deliver. How do you say this? The delivery team's deployment issue. But let's stop there, and I'll answer any questions you have.
No, that was a really good introduction, and I think it leads open a couple of questions that I had. So I think you highlighted it, but this is representative of a test case, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when I'm looking at your automated report that you have the GitLab QA bot creating for you now, are these those test cases as well that you're going to be migrating over into the test cases feature?
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
And this is for master, and there'll be one for master. There'll be one for staging. Master, we run a lot of tests, as you can see. This is a
it's quite the long report.
Yes,
for sure.
And it links multiple, and you can see why that implementing test sessions at the pipeline doesn't give you the big picture, because it can be a part of multiple pipelines. And the way we work at GitLab, we're actually using a different instance. We use ops.gitlabs.net to run production and deployment, because we need that redundancy. If something goes down, there's still an instance that's always up and running, so we can come back and make changes. We don't want to, if you put everything in one instance, if it goes down, everybody's locked out. And we need this. And I would assume the same challenges will be there for customers as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So if I'm a customer, I don't work at GitLab, and I want to do something similar, if nothing has been built yet for test sessions, how can I implement what's already here? Like, how can I use a similar GitLab QA bot in my own environment?
So this is, it's in the triage bot. So what do we do with this? It's just a script that calls the APIs, the issues. We already know what test case they are, and we already put that URL inside the code.
Yep.
So when you run something, there's a report at the end that tells you, okay, these were the links to the test case URLs that were part of this pipeline. And what this is just making API calls. It's dogfooding our APIs as well. I want to highlight that. And then generating a summary view of what happened that day for the master branch.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the area that I'm getting stuck on is trying to understand how we evolve this from a script that's being run by one of our bots into a out-of-the-box feature of GitLab.
Yes.
So
that's the logical next step.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to break down some of that logic and see, like, how do we expose those references that you make to say, like, this test session report is looking for these environments to push the test cases from and that kind of stuff. So I know we've been building out test cases. It's got some limited functionality, a part of it. One thing that had come to mind, and you provided a little bit of feedback on this already, but I wanted to double back on it again. In my mind, like, it feels like test cases are kind of like issues, like they're a collection of work. It could be a number of tasks that are within them. And we can represent those in milestones that teams can customize based off of their own needs. So to me, it felt like if we represented each test session as if it were like a milestone, you could have a way to sort or filter down the test cases in a singular view. So the way I was looking at it was your reports here, if you have the ones that are open, this one I guess you're just keeping pinned for the example's sake. And then this is the one you care most about, with previous reports being archived and done. So
that's a good start, I would say. And it may solve a good number of users. At GitLab, we aim to deploy every day. So one milestone, you probably have like 20 deploys to production. And for every deploy, you would have a test session that runs on multiple environments. First will be master, second will be staging, third will be pre-prod, and we have tests running on production as well. So think of, you have the same tests running in all 4 places for just one deployment. And think that you may end up having 30 deployments per month, one milestone only.
So 120 reports essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be a lot in the same list.
It will be, and that's where the continuous delivery world is going. Like actually, teams deploy multiple times a day, and I think it's good to start to understand there. It may be better to build bottoms up to solve that first. Like, you're not locking people into just one currency of a milestone, per se, for lack of a better term. But you have the flexibility for the test session to be, multiples without without a bound of a time.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to highlight more is when you're dealing with I'm forgetting where the milestone, right here. Like, when you're dealing with a milestone feature, you can see what all the issues were in that milestone. So in like a similar way, you could find what all the test cases were for that specific test session, which I think is what the intent of your MVC concept is. look, we have a collection of test cases that ran. We're just pointing you essentially to where these will appear in a test case list anyway. I could see how this could be problematic for GitLab if we're deploying so frequently. We'd have a lot of test session reports.
And that's fine, right? As long as
yeah,
you can close it out once it's tried and done.
right.
I think it's actually a good thing to have many. I think
Yeah.
what you want is I think mapping to a milestone is fine, but be prepared to have multiple test sessions for one milestone.
Yeah.
Give flexibility that way.
Yeah, maybe I'll clarify this again. I'm not mapping to a specific milestone. I'm using the UI of a milestone to represent a similar relationship.
Got it. Okay, that clarifies it up.
Yeah, just trying to look to what are some other components we already have built in GitLab that do something similar as a way to simplify the design. And then from there, expanding, how can we make this feature more flexible? So yeah, definitely, like if we provide an extra filter to reduce down the number of test sessions or something, but ultimately, like these are trying to point you to these test cases, and these test cases have all the information buried within them. I think the one thing that you probably be missing here, though, is like the ability to talk about the action, but I guess that's where test cases could further improve its implementation as well.
I want to say that test cases, are you familiar with the object-oriented nomenclature of having classes and instances?
As far as my introduction classes to CS go, a little bit.
Okay, so here's the thing. A test case is the definition.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to capture the results because it can be run in many places. So think of it as a set of instructions to do. The test case can have information on the location of the pipelines. Like this test needs to run in master, needs to run in pre-prod, needs to run in staging, needs to run in staging. It might not need to run in production. This test needs to run only in production as a sanity check. I've been there in that spot before where we just want a login test in production running every minute to make sure things are up and running. So the test case is the instruction, but it's not the result. The test session is the result. And that moves, it can be closed, open very frequently. Test cases, there's little changes there, if that makes sense.
Okay, so the same test session will open and close depending on if it's been triaged or not, essentially?
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Okay, got it. So you'll typically see the same 120 reports for GitLab, but depending on if they all pass or not, it'll be whether or not you have to actually go triage it and do something with it.
The triaging happens in test session, and I actually have a good, let's check on time right here real quick. Okay, we have some time. I have a good example to show why we shouldn't. If you can share the screen real quick, I'm just gonna.
Oh yeah, I thought maybe you had one. Yeah.
Oh, you have it open already, so kudos. So if you go
go
to test session report master and you click on maybe any test here.
I guess one.
Yeah. Okay, this is new. Oh, it relates to. Can you click on one of the old test cases? I think we did this too because we wanted to clean up some things.
Like one of the ones down here or something?
Yeah, one of the ones down here. Yeah, there should be some that's really, really long.
Seems like the same.
Not here. Can you click on the first link, results for? I think this was the first iteration.
You're saying that on this page or?
No, on the previous page. On the previous page. When you went into a test case. And you see that
this one
relates. Yeah, I think this was our first MVC iteration, and we try to pack everything into one. Oh, I guess it's
maybe not.
But essentially, what I'm trying to say is, we posted the results of a test case in a test case issue itself, and it ends up being a mile long because it starts to accumulate.
Yeah.
And it's doing two things. It's storing both the instruction and it's storing the result.
Okay.
And that.
Yeah, I was looking at some of your earlier test session reports that you had generated, and I could see how you guys had already iterated on some of the ways that you were showing and hiding data.
Yes. Let's see if there's any. I think the team has cleaned up quite a bit. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share my screen. My apologies.
No, you're all good. Go for it.
You see my screen?
Yep.
This was the first iterations
Mm.
of the test case. And you can see this right here.
Yeah.
This one is really like heavy. You can see this. And I can show you why. We went far enough to experiment having the bot treat this as like the control panel and the whole historical context of a test case.
Mm.
The test case itself is this, and the description is thin because it has already been automated. It's not a manual test. And the bot just keeps on adding more and more results. And then these are live views. So if I were to look at a test, I know exactly what the state of the test is. It's working in Canary, it's working in master, it's working in Nihilist, it's working in production. All good, fine and dandy. So I think test cases, we eventually want to build something like this in the next iterations.
Yeah.
But these, these doesn't belong in the test case. If there's a test that runs for 2 years, these should be abstracted out into test sessions collectively, and those are time bound. The test case isn't time bound, if that makes sense.
I think it does a little bit, and I'll have to mull on it a little bit more.
Okay.
But I have this for reference, so that's good.
Yeah,
follow up on that. So when these test cases are run, if you're not going to be using a bot to trigger these reports, what will be the trigger? Like, where do you envision creating the definition for how it maps to a specific environment, or which report it should be building, which test cases should be aggregated together?
Right now, that logic is in our bot.
Right.
It's a collection of lists because we know the pipelines.
Okay.
So there's a trigger at the end of the pipeline to run these reports. And what it does is create an issue and then link what are the tests that were ran, and then map the two together and then put it in the test session report. So it's not, there's no trigger per se. There's a job at the end of the deployment that is the reporter. We call it the test case reporter. And that the duty of that job is to generate that report.
So instead of saying, "Hey reporter, go build an issue," you say, "Hey reporter, go build the test session report and map these test cases to it."
Yes.
Instead of taking what we already have now and just putting it in an issue.
I think they're both doing the same thing, but yeah, your first definition sounds correct.
I'm thinking more in terms of like the UI as opposed to the backend logic. So yeah, I'm just trying to think, how do I give the user dexterity to be able to do this? And it might be one of the things like they're configuring a job to do the work. I don't necessarily know what that job looks like, but maybe it is just in saying, instead of putting the output over here, put the output over here. Because I don't think hitting new test session button in the UI that's not useful. You need to have a job run this and create it for you, as opposed to having someone create it in UI.
I think it needs to come from the test session UI, because there's other use cases for manual testing, and it's not going to be triggered by the pipeline. So a test session, if you look at other companies, a test session could be a blend of an automated test report and a manual test session that we used to have feature assurance that product managers run through every release. And since we have already automated a number of scenarios, we no longer need that, and then we pay back productivity to the entire team that way.
Gotcha. But other teams might not have that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So if we were to build this for the greater people, the wider community, we need to account for that. And I think coming down from the business makes sense. We will have to solve whether how you want to have a work resource that spins up that thing and generates that thing. But I think coming top down from a requirements test case and then test sessions, maybe there's a map that we can put in the UI that, hey, I need this generated, or there's a wizard that you can do that. But I would suggest starting with a boring solution. It could be manual.
Absolutely.
It could be manual. As long as there's an API, we can automate that while we get better at knowing what the users want.
Right. Yeah. I mean, personally, I think I would love to help guide the direction of moving away from having to generate all these issues to at least getting into like a dedicated feature in GitLab.
Yeah.
And then work from there. So yeah, I would love to continue following up, getting feedback from you. Are there any other individuals from your team? I realize you're probably a very busy person, and I'd be happy to solicit feedback from other team members. I'm just not as familiar with your group.
Yeah, I think a team that's an easy to start would be the fulfillment and growth team. So Vinci, you can work with her on that, and Ramya. I think that team uses the test case feature very, very heavy-handedly, and the ICs in those two teams help implement it, use the test case very often.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thanks, Meg. I think we're good to wrap it up here if you want to.
Awesome. Yeah. So please send me the link as well, because I want to propagate it in our department channel, so they are aware that we have these conversations going on, that eventually test case sessions will be a feature in GitLab.
Yep, definitely. I'm going to add the link to the issue in GitLab, and then I'll CC you on it.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enjoy the talk. Stay safe.
Yeah, likewise. Bye.
Bye.